The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Every screen on Earth showed the same image. A sleek, silvery spacecraft hovering above the United Nations building in New York. Humanity's first contact had finally happened, and it wasn't how anyone had expected. Jack Russell stared at his phone in disbelief. As the head of the International Olympic Committee, he had been in the middle of planning the 2048 Summer Games when the world changed forever. "Turn that up," Jack said to his assistant. The news reporter's voice filled his office. "The aliens call themselves the Galactic Confederation, a union of over 300 species from across our galaxy. They have invited Earth to join their community and participate in something called the Galactic Olympics." Jack nearly spilled his coffee. The Olympics? His Olympics. 3 days later, Jack found himself sitting in a room with 5 aliens and 6 human government officials. The aliens looked almost like tall, thin humans with pale blue skin and large, sensitive eyes. They called themselves Zonarians. "The Galactic Olympics are the pride of our confederation," said Krell, the Zonarian leader. "They happen every 12 Earth years. We were most excited to discover that you have a similar tradition." "Yes," Jack said carefully. "Our Olympics date back thousands of years." "As do ours," Krell said with what looked like a smile. "We believe this shared cultural element makes Earth perfect for membership in our confederation." Lisa Martinez, seated beside Jack, leaned forward. As Earth's leading physicist specializing in sports engineering, she had been quickly added to the contact team. "What kind of events are in your Olympics?" she asked. Krell waved a hand, and a hologram appeared in the center of the table. It showed creatures of all shapes and sizes running, jumping, swimming in strange liquids, and playing games Jack couldn't begin to understand. "We have races, strength competitions, team sports, and much more," Krell explained. "Each species brings their own strengths to the games." "And you want us to compete?" Jack asked. "Against beings who evolved on different planets?" "Exactly," Krell said. "The glory isn't always in winning, but in the attempt. Many new species don't win medals for several games, but participation brings respect and understanding." Lisa studied the hologram with sharp eyes. Some of these athletes seemed to have technological enhancements. "Of course," Krell said. "Regulated enhancements are permitted. We would help supply Earth with regulation equipment." After the meeting, Jack and Lisa walked through the UN garden, talking quietly. "They seem friendly enough," Jack said, "but something feels off." Lisa nodded. "Did you notice how excited they were about us joining? More than the other parts of their Confederation offer." "The Zonarians have been particularly insistent," came a new voice. Jack turned to see a tall man approaching them. "Steve Harris," the man said, offering his hand. "Cybersecurity. The president asked me to join your team." "Why would we need cybersecurity for the Olympics?" Lisa asked. Steve's expression was serious. "Because the data packets the Zonarians sent contain hidden code. I've been analyzing it, and something isn't right." Jack looked between them. "You think this is some kind of trap?" "I think," Steve said carefully, "that we're missing something important. The Zonarians were too eager, too helpful." Later that week, a diplomatic officer named Amanda Wright joined their growing team. Her first meeting with them was troubling. "I've spoken with representatives from 3 other species," she reported. "They all had the same reaction when I mentioned the Zonarians were helping us prepare. They seemed concerned." Jack looked at the small team assembled in his office. Lisa, Steve, Amanda, and himself. Outside the window, the Zonarian ship still hovered over New York, a constant reminder of how the world had changed. "Okay," Jack said firmly. "We accept their invitation to the Galactic Olympics, but we keep our eyes open. If the Zonarians have some agenda beyond friendly competition, we need to find out what it is." What none of them realized was just how right they were. 1 month after first contact, the newly formed Earth Galactic Olympic Committee set up headquarters in Geneva. Jack paced the main conference room, where screens displayed alien sporting events on a loop. Lisa sat at the central table, surrounded by strange devices the Zonarians had provided as samples of Olympic equipment. "So this is for the speed trials." Jack picked up what looked like a pair of metal boots. "According to Krell, yes," Lisa said, not looking up from her tablet. "They generate a stabilizing field to help athletes maintain balance at high speeds. Every species uses a version adjusted for their biology. And we're supposed to trust that these are regulation." Jack placed the boots back on the table carefully. Lisa finally looked up. "That's why I'm taking everything apart before our athletes use any of it." The door opened, and Steve walked in with 3 cups of coffee. He handed them out before sitting down. Steve had dark circles under his eyes from late nights analyzing Zonarian data. "Any progress?" Jack asked. Steve sipped his coffee. "The more I dig, the more I find small discrepancies in what they're telling us. Nothing I can prove is intentional, but enough to make me suspicious." "Like what?" Lisa asked. "Like the fact that according to their own historical records, the Zonarians have been losing influence in the Confederation for the past 30 years. Yet they're presenting themselves to us as primary representatives." The door opened again, and Amanda walked in. She had spent the past weeks meeting with representatives from other alien species who had arrived after the Zonarians. "The Tellurians want to meet with us," she announced, without the Zonarians knowing. The Tellurians were an aquatic species who looked somewhat like tall, humanoid otters. Their representative, Valex, met them in a secure room that Steve had carefully checked for surveillance. "We wish to speak frankly," Valex said, his whiskers twitching. "The Zonarians are not being truthful with you." Jack felt his stomach tighten. "About what exactly?" "They're standing in the Confederation. 3 cycles ago, what you would call 36 years, they were caught attempting to manipulate the games." Valex's large eyes blinked slowly. "They were not banned, but their influence diminished greatly. And now they're using us for something," Amanda said, understanding dawning on her face. "We believe so," Valex confirmed. "Be wary of any equipment or training they provide. The Zonarians are known for their skill with hidden technologies." After the Tellurian left, the 4 humans sat in silence for a long moment. "We need to test everything," Lisa finally said. "Not just examine it. Actually test it under competition conditions." 2 weeks later, they had their first breakthrough. Lisa had set up a testing facility where human athletes could try the alien equipment. Carlos Diaz, a sprinter with an advanced prosthetic leg, was testing the speed boots when they suddenly failed. The stabilizing field collapsed exactly 3.2 seconds into his acceleration. Lisa explained to the others, reviewing the footage. If that happened during competition at full speed, he could have been seriously injured. "Could it be just a malfunction?" Jack asked. Lisa shook her head. "I found this." She projected an image of a tiny circuit. "It's a timer connected to a disruptor. It's designed to fail." "So they want us to embarrass ourselves," Amanda said quietly. "Or worse," Steve added. "Some of these failures could be dangerous." Jack walked to the window, looking out at the Geneva Lake. "We need a plan. If we confront them directly, they could deny everything, and we have no standing with the other species. Then we don't confront them," Lisa said, a determined look in her eyes. "We beat them at their own game." "How?" Jack turned back to the group. Lisa smiled. "We're human. We adapt. We make our own equipment, and we train our athletes to expect sabotage. We let the Zonarians think their plan is working," Steve added, catching on. "And we gather evidence the whole time," Amanda finished, "to present to the Confederation when the moment is right." Jack nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "We'll need the best athletes Earth has to offer, and they'll need to know exactly what they're getting into." The Earth Galactic Olympic team was about to begin real training, not just for competition, but for combat of a different kind. Steve sat in his darkened office, the blue light from multiple screens reflecting on his tired face. For 3 weeks, he had been working through the night, decoding the hidden layers in the Zonarian data. Tonight, he finally broke through. "Got you," he whispered as lines of alien code revealed their secrets. He immediately called the others. An hour later, Jack, Lisa, and Amanda gathered around his desk as he explained his findings. "It's worse than we thought," Steve said, pointing at the screens. The Zonarians didn't just rig the equipment to fail randomly. They programmed it to fail at specific moments that would cause maximum embarrassment, during finals, medal ceremonies, or highly viewed events. "How sophisticated is the sabotage?" Lisa asked, leaning closer to examine the code. "Very. Look here." Steve highlighted a section. "This is from the neural interface for the strategic combat event. It's designed to feed false information to the athlete at key decision points." "That could be dangerous," Jack said, his face grim. "It gets worse," Steve continued. "I found this in the communications they sent us about standard equipment modifications." He pulled up another screen. "This isn't just about embarrassing us. Some of these failures could cause serious injuries." Amanda shook her head in disgust. "They're desperate to regain their standing in the Confederation, even if it means hurting people." "I've been talking more with the Tellurians," she added. "They told me the Zonarians were once highly respected, but after their cheating scandal, many species refuse to work with them. They see us as their path back to influence." "How?" Jack asked. "Their plan seems to be, first, make humans look primitive and incompetent. Then step in as our mentors to help the poor, struggling newcomers. They position themselves as benevolent guides to a primitive species, regaining status through their generosity," Amanda explained. Lisa, who had been quiet, suddenly straightened up. "I need to get back to the lab. If this code is accurate, I can design countermeasures for some of the sabotage." "What should we do about the Zonarians?" Jack asked. "Confront them." "Not yet," Steve warned. "We don't have enough leverage. We need to gather more evidence and allies. And we need to keep acting like we trust them," Amanda added. "If they suspect we're onto them, they might try something more direct." The next morning, Krell and 2 other Zonarians visited the human training facility. Jack greeted them with a practiced smile. "How is the equipment working?" Krell asked, his large eyes scanning the room where human athletes were training. "We're still familiarizing ourselves with it," Jack said smoothly. "Our athletes find some of it quite challenging." "That is to be expected," Krell said with what humans had learned was a Zonarian expression of satisfaction. "You are the newest species in the Confederation. No one expects you to excel immediately." "We're just honored to participate," Jack replied, fighting to keep his expression neutral. After the Zonarians left, Jack went to Lisa's workshop beneath the training facility. There, hidden from alien eyes, Earth's real Olympic preparation was happening. Lisa stood surrounded by a team of engineers from around the world. On tables around them lay human versions of the alien equipment, simplified but effective, and most importantly, not sabotage. "How's it going?" Jack asked. Lisa smiled. "Better than the Zonarians could imagine. We've reversed-engineered most of their basic technology. What we can't replicate, we found human alternatives for." "And the training?" Jack looked through a window where athletes were practicing with deliberately malfunctioning equipment. "Carlos can now finish a sprint even if his stabilizers fail mid-race. Olivia has developed a gymnastics routine that works whether or not the gravity adjusters function. And Nathan," she pointed to a man in deep concentration wearing a neural headset, "can now compete in strategic combat even with false information being fed to him." Jack nodded with pride. "So we're ready to beat them at their own game." "Not just beat them," Lisa said with determination. "We're going to expose them to the entire Confederation." Word spread quickly among Earth's top athletes. This would be the greatest challenge any human competitors had ever faced, not just competing against alien species, but doing so while overcoming deliberate sabotage. Many declined when they learned the risks, but others stepped forward, drawn by the historic opportunity. Carlos Diaz ran on the indoor track, pushing his body to its limits. As a sprinter who had already overcome the challenge of running with a prosthetic leg, he was used to adapting. Now he practiced with the speed boots Lisa had modified. Ready for the test, Lisa called from the sidelines, holding a small control device. Carlos nodded, settling into his starting position. Do it at random. I need to be ready for anything. Lisa pressed a button, and Carlos took off. 3 seconds into his sprint, the right boot suddenly lost power. Instead of falling, Carlos smoothly adjusted his running style, compensating for the failure. He crossed the finish line only slightly slower than his normal time. Perfect, Lisa said, reviewing the data on her tablet. You're getting better at the adjustment each time. In another section of the facility, Olivia Johnson practiced her gymnastics routine. The alien version of gymnastics involved a field that could change gravity during the performance. The Zonarian equipment was designed to change gravity at the wrong moments, causing the athlete to crash to the floor or float away uncontrollably. Olivia completed a complex series of flips as the gravity shifted unexpectedly beneath her. She recovered mid-air, using subtle body movements to control her landing despite the fluctuating forces. How did you do that? Jack asked, watching from the side. I learned to feel the first microsecond of change, Olivia explained, wiping sweat from her forehead. That gives me just enough time to adjust. It's like feeling the wind change when you're on a balance beam. Across the facility, Nathan Patel removed his neural interface after completing a simulated strategic combat session. The event combined physical movement with complex decision-making, similar to a life-sized chess match where the players themselves were the pieces. How was it? Steve asked, taking the interface to examine it. Your false information algorithm is getting more convincing, Nathan said. But I'm learning to trust my own judgment over what the interface tells me. Steve nodded. That's exactly what we need. The Zonarians expect us to rely completely on the technology. In her office, Amanda was building a network of alien allies. On her screen was a Tellurian diplomat. Several other species have experienced similar sabotage from the Zonarians in past games, the Tellurians said. They were more subtle then, but the pattern is the same. Would they be willing to testify about this to the Confederation Council? Amanda asked. Not yet. They fear retribution. But if you can provide solid evidence during the games, they will support your claims. Meanwhile, Samantha Kelly trained in the environmental chamber. As a mountain climber and deep-sea explorer, she was Earth's hope for the extreme environment competition. The chamber could simulate everything from volcanic heat to Arctic cold, from crushing pressure to near vacuum. The Zonarians will probably make it colder than the settings show, Lisa warned over the intercom. Can you handle a sudden temperature drop of about 20 degrees? Inside the chamber, now set to Arctic conditions, Samantha adjusted her oxygen mask. Bring it on, she said calmly. I survived worse on Everest. 2 months into training, Jack called everyone together for an update. The Galactic Olympics begin in 3 weeks, he said, looking around at the team. The Zonarians are getting suspicious about our limited use of their equipment, but they still think we're just being stubborn or proud. Our alternative equipment is ready, Lisa reported. Not as advanced as theirs, but honest and functional. We've documented every instance of sabotage in their systems, Steve added. The evidence is secure and backed up in multiple locations. I've built relationships with 7 different species who are sympathetic to our situation, Amanda said. They're waiting to see what happens. Jack took a deep breath. Then it's time for the next phase. Tomorrow we leave for the Galactic Olympic Station. Remember, we need to maintain our cover until we have the Confederation's attention. The human athletes nodded solemnly. They were about to make history in ways no Olympic competitors ever had before. The human team stepped out of the transport ship and into the massive space station where the Galactic Olympics would be held. For most of them, it was their first time leaving Earth's atmosphere. The station was a giant ring spinning slowly to create artificial gravity, with sections built to accommodate the needs of hundreds of different species. It's like walking into a dream, Olivia whispered, staring up at the vast curved ceiling glowing with soft light. Jack tried to look confident as he led the group, but he felt as overwhelmed as the rest. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved around them. Some walked on legs, others slithered or floated, and a few rolled like living wheels. Krell and several other Zonarians waited to greet them. "Welcome to Olympic Station," Krell said, his blue skin shimmering under the lights. "Your quarters are in Section Earth, which we have prepared according to your biological needs." "Thank you for your thoughtfulness," Jack replied carefully. As they followed the Zonarians, Steve nudged Jack and pointed discreetly. Several other alien species were watching them with obvious curiosity. "Word has spread that we're the newest members," Amanda whispered. "We're the main attraction." Their quarters were simple but comfortable, with Earth normal gravity, temperature, and lighting. After the Zonarians left, Steve immediately began scanning for surveillance devices. "We're being monitored," he confirmed, finding 3 hidden cameras, but only in the common areas, not the personal rooms or the equipment storage. "Perfect," Lisa said. "We can keep up appearances in public and work on our real plans in private." The next day was the opening ceremony. The human team joined the parade of athletes, each species carrying a symbol of their homeworld. Carlos proudly carried Earth's flag, the Olympic rings above an image of Earth. They entered an enormous arena filled with thousands of spectators from across the galaxy. The humans tried not to stare at the bewildering variety of alien life forms, but it was impossible not to feel small and primitive in comparison. High Commissioner Zex, the head of the Zonarian delegation, stood at the central podium. His speech was transmitted and automatically translated for all species. "We welcome all competitors to the 287th Galactic Olympics," he announced, "especially our newest members, the humans of planet Earth." He gestured toward the human team, and the arena's attention turned to them. "These primitive but promising beings have much to learn from galactic society," Zex continued, his tone condescending. "Their participation today is a first step on a long journey toward true civilization. We Zonarians have taken it upon ourselves to guide them through this process." Jack clenched his jaw, but maintained a neutral expression. Beside him, Lisa squeezed his arm in warning. "Remember the plan," she whispered. "Let them think they're in control." When it was Jack's turn to speak, he approached the podium with practiced humility. "On behalf of Earth, we thank the Galactic Confederation for this opportunity," he began. "We may be new to your community, but humans have faced challenges throughout our history. We have learned to adapt, to overcome, and to grow stronger through adversity." Jack paused, looking directly at Zex. "We look forward to showing you what humanity can do when tested." The subtle challenge in his words wasn't lost on many of the alien delegates. A murmur ran through the arena. After the ceremony, a small creature with feathery tentacles approached Amanda. It introduced itself as a representative from the Northern Cluster. "Your leader's words were interesting," it said in a bubbling voice. "They seem to contain a hidden meaning." Amanda smiled diplomatically. "Humans often find strength in difficult situations. The Zonarians are not known for their honesty." The Norvan added quietly, "We will watch your team with great interest." As they returned to their quarters, Jack gathered the team. "We've made our first impression. Now we need to be ready for whatever the Zonarians try during the competitions. The preliminary events start tomorrow," Lisa reminded them. "Carlos, you're up first in the speed trials." Carlos nodded, his expression determined. "I won't let Earth down." None of them slept well that night. The games that would decide not just medals, but humanity's place in the galactic community, were about to begin. The speed trial arena was a massive oval track with lanes designed for different types of movement. Some were solid for runners, others liquid-filled for swimmers, and a few were actually vertical tubes for climbing species. Carlos stood at the starting line in the runners section, surrounded by aliens with body types built for speed. "Remember, your left boot will likely fail about halfway through," Lisa whispered as she made final adjustments to his equipment. "We've practiced for this." Carlos nodded, trying to stay calm. He had faced many challenges in his athletic career, but nothing like this. Next to him stood a Vexoid, a creature with 6 thin legs and a body like a streamlined arrow. In another lane was a Meridian, whose body seemed to ripple with barely contained energy. Humans are so fragile-looking, the Vexoid commented, studying Carlos. How do you move quickly with only 2 legs? We manage, Carlos replied with a smile. From a booth above the track, Jack, Amanda, and Steve watched nervously. Krell and several other Zonarians stood nearby, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. The human will be lucky to finish the race, Krell remarked casually. First-time competitors often find the speed trials overwhelming. The starting signal flashed, and the competitors exploded into motion. The Vexoid immediately took the lead, its 6 legs a blur. The Meridian seemed to flow rather than run, its body undulating gracefully. Carlos started strong, his modified speed boots working perfectly. Then, exactly as Lisa had predicted, his left boot failed at the halfway point. Carlos stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, he switched to the running technique they had practiced, compensating for the uneven thrust from his right boot. Look at that, Amanda whispered, pointing to a small device in Krell's hand. He's triggering the failure remotely. Steve nodded, discreetly capturing an image with a hidden camera in his jacket. On the track, Carlos was now in 5th place but still running. The crowd of alien spectators buzzed with surprise. They had expected the human to crash out of the race entirely. As he approached the finish line, Carlos pushed himself harder, overtaking another competitor to finish 4th. 4th place, Jack exclaimed. That's incredible for a first attempt. Krell and the other Zonarians looked stunned. Impressive. For a primitive species, Krell said, his voice tight with annoyance. Though still not medal-worthy. Later that day, Olivia competed in the spatial gymnastics event. The arena featured variable gravity fields where competitors performed complex movements showcasing control and grace. As she prepared to start, the Zonarian judge made a subtle adjustment to the control panel. They're setting the gravity fluctuations to be more extreme than shown on the display, Steve whispered, monitoring the readings through special glasses Lisa had designed. Olivia began her routine with a series of flips that would have been impossible in Earth's gravity. Then, as she launched into her main sequence, the gravity suddenly intensified, threatening to slam her to the floor. Instead of fighting it, Olivia adapted her movements, using the increased gravity to power a different sequence than she had planned. The alien audience watched in fascination as the human smoothly transitioned between movements despite the erratic gravity changes. When she finished, even the Zonarian judges seemed impressed. 2nd place for Olivia, Amanda announced as the scores appeared. We actually won a silver medal. By the end of the first day, Earth had secured 1 silver medal and 2 4th-place finishes, far better than anyone had expected from newcomers. In their quarters that evening, the team celebrated cautiously. The Zonarians underestimated how quickly humans can adapt, Lisa said, reviewing data from the day's events. But they'll try harder tomorrow. Samantha's extreme environment event is next, Jack reminded them. And it's the most dangerous one yet. I'm ready, Samantha said confidently. They think humans are fragile, but they've never met someone who's climbed Everest without supplemental oxygen. Steve lowered his voice. I've detected increased communications between the Zonarians. They're worried about our performance and planning something bigger. Good, Jack said firmly. The more desperate they get, the more mistakes they'll make, and we'll be waiting to catch them. 3 days into the Galactic Olympics, Earth had collected 2 silver medals and 3 bronze. The human team had exceeded all expectations, especially considering the systematic sabotage they were overcoming. The Zonarians grew increasingly frustrated, making their sabotage more obvious and dangerous. Samantha had survived the extreme environment event despite the Zonarians programming the chamber to drop to temperatures far below the stated parameters. Her experience in Earth's harshest climates had prepared her well, earning a bronze medal that left the Zonarians stunned. Now it was time for the strategic combat event, the most prestigious competition in the Galactic Olympics. Nathan Pottle stood in the preparation room, mentally reviewing his training. "This is the one the Zonarians care about most," Steve explained, checking Nathan's neural interface. "They've won gold in this event for the last 300 years. "No pressure," Nathan replied with a small smile. "Their champion is Kor, a master strategist," Lisa said, making final adjustments to Nathan's equipment. "We've analyzed recordings of his previous matches. He relies heavily on the neural interface to process complex scenarios." Jack placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "We've replaced most of the Zonarian tech in your interface with our own systems, but they'll still try to feed you false information through the main network. Remember your training." Nathan nodded. "Trust my instincts, not the interface." The strategic combat arena was a three-dimensional grid floating in zero gravity. The competitors would move through the space, making both physical and mental moves in a game that combined elements of chess, martial arts, and three-dimensional strategy. High Commissioner Zex personally supervised the preparations. The Zonarian audience section was filled to capacity. This was their showcase event. "The human competitor will face our champion, Exor," Zex announced to the crowd. "As a special accommodation for the primitive humans, we have provided them with enhanced neural interfaces to help them understand the complexities of the game." Amanda, watching from the observation deck with Jack and Steve, scoffed. "Enhanced to feed false data, he means." Nathan and Exor entered the arena from opposite sides. The Zonarian moved with practiced grace in the zero gravity, while Nathan took a moment to adjust to the weightless environment. The match began with Exor making a standard opening move, advancing a projection of himself into the grid. Nathan followed with a conservative response. For the first few minutes, they exchanged simple maneuvers, testing each other's defenses. Then Nathan's neural interface flickered, and false data began flowing in. The grid appeared to shift, showing openings that weren't really there and hiding actual vulnerabilities in Exor's position. Nathan hesitated for just a moment. Then, with a decisive motion, he reached up and disconnected the main data feed to his interface. A gasp went through the crowd. No competitor had ever intentionally disabled their neural interface during a match. Even Exor paused in surprise. "What is he doing?" Krell demanded, standing up from his seat. "He's competing the human way," Jack replied with satisfaction. Without the enhanced processing of the neural interface, Nathan would be limited to his natural human abilities, but he would also be free from the Zonarian deception. Nathan began moving through the grid with new confidence, making unexpected moves that confused Exor. The Zonarian champion increasingly relied on his interface, trying to predict Nathan's strategy. But without the usual data patterns to analyze, the Zonarian's advantage disappeared. The match stretched on, move after move, neither competitor gaining a clear advantage. The audience watched in growing amazement as the human held his ground against the reigning champion. Then Nathan made a sequence of moves that seemed random at first, but gradually revealed a complex trap. Exor, too dependent on his interface to see the pattern, walked right into it. When the final move was made, the arena fell silent. The score display flashed, confirming what seemed impossible. Nathan had won. "Impossible," Zex shouted, standing up. "The human must have cheated." The accusation hung in the air as Nathan floated calmly in the center of the arena, his disconnected neural interface still dangling from his hand. Visible proof that he had used less technology, not more. Amanda smiled. "Now," she whispered to Jack, "it's time to spring our trap." The arena erupted in chaos after Nathan's victory. Zonarian officials surrounded Zex, all talking at once. Other alien species watched with growing interest as the humans remained calm amid the uproar. "The human has violated competition rules," Zex shouted, pointing at Nathan, who was now back on the platform with his team, using non-standard equipment. "Actually, Amanda said, stepping forward with a small device in her hand. "We have evidence that it is the Zonarians who have violated the rules." She activated the device, projecting a hologram visible to all in the arena. "This is a record of the sabotage built into every piece of equipment the Zonarians provided to Earth," she explained as the hologram displayed schematics and code, designed to fail at critical moments. Steve stepped up next to her. "And this," he said, activating another projection, "is a recording of High Commissioner Zex himself remotely triggering the failure of our athletes' equipment during the speed trials." The image clearly showed Zex using a hidden controller during Carlos's race. A murmur spread through the alien audience. "These are human lies," Zex sputtered, his blue skin darkening with anger. "The evidence can be verified by any technical expert in the Confederation," Lisa added. "We've documented every instance of sabotage." A tall, willowy alien stepped onto the platform. Jack recognized her as a representative of the Confederation Council. "These are serious accusations," she said, her voice melodic but firm. "If true, they violate the most sacred principles of the Galactic Olympics." "We invite a full investigation," Jack replied. "We came here to compete fairly, nothing more." "The humans are primitives," Zex shouted. "They cannot possibly understand our technology well enough to make these claims. Yet they understood it well enough to win against your champion without it," came a bubbling voice. The Northern representative Amanda had spoken with earlier floated forward. "Perhaps they are not as primitive as you claimed." More alien representatives began to speak up. "The Zonarians provided our delegation with special equipment 3 games ago," said a reptilian being. "Our athletes suffered unexplained failures as well." "And ours," added a creature that looked like a glowing jellyfish. The council representative raised her many-fingered hands for silence. "The council will investigate these allegations immediately. All competitions are suspended until we reach a conclusion." 3 days later, the human team stood before the full Confederation Council. The investigation had been thorough and swift. The evidence compiled by Steve, Lisa, and Amanda had been irrefutable. "The Council finds the Zonarian delegation guilty of systematic sabotage and deception," announced the head counselor. "Their actions have dishonored the spirit of the Galactic Olympics." Zex and the other Zonarian officials stood with heads bowed as the judgment continued. "The Zonarian Olympic Committee is suspended for the next 3 Olympic cycles. High Commissioner Zex and his associates are banned permanently from all Olympic functions." The council turned to the human delegation. "To the representatives of Earth, we offer our sincere apologies. Your first experience of galactic society should not have been marred by such dishonorable conduct." Jack stepped forward. "We came here to show what humans can do. Perhaps we've done that in ways we didn't expect." The head counselor nodded. "Indeed, your athletes competed with honor despite facing deliberate sabotage. Your team uncovered the deception with intelligence and patience rather than hasty accusations. You have proven yourselves worthy members of our galactic community." 1 month later, the Earth team returned home to a hero's welcome. They had earned a total of 2 silver medals and 4 bronze, a remarkable achievement for newcomers, especially given the circumstances. As Jack and Lisa watched the celebration from a quiet corner, he asked, "What do you think will happen at the next Galactic Olympics?" Lisa smiled. "They've already announced that Earth will host a special exhibition next year to introduce more human sports to the Confederation. And after what we've shown them, I suspect no one will underestimate humans again." Jack nodded, looking up at the night sky where stars, and now allies, awaited. "They thought they could rig the game against us. They never realized that overcoming impossible odds is humanity's specialty."